Good evening. Welcome to the Fortean Slip. This is episode 54. I don't even know what to fucking call this thing.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'll come up with something. Maybe.
You always do.
Maybe. You might get the base. It's this. We are going to discuss aliens, UFOs, and government cover-ups therein.
Yummy.
Focusing on the Cash Landrum Incident and Rendlesham Forest in the wake of Boyd Bushman. Former Lockheed Martin employee comes out, shows his dick. I mean,
no, he didn't do that.
No, he didn't do that. He,
Listen, the guy's dead, Chris. You shouldn't be talking about him that way.
Well, you don't know. He may have shown his dick.
I'm sure at one point or another he probably did.
But,
you know, behind closed doors and shit. But
he came out and basically said that he saw aliens.
Well, I don't know that he actually saw aliens. The photographs that he showed were allegedly, from what I got from the interview, I don't know if did you listen to it, Chris?
No. Who the fuck am I?
But anyway, from what I got from the interview, he had given his camera to someone else, or perhaps the aliens themselves. But anyway, the alien photos themselves turned out to be just a prop you can buy at Walmart. So those were not real. Now, I don't know that. Yeah, well, that was kind of out before we did our little news story the other day. But there was debate on whether Mr. Bushman ever worked for Lockheed Martin. And even in the article I read the other night, it said that, you know, his employment history couldn't be confirmed and his education history couldn't be confirmed. But being the investigative reporter that I am, I typed Boyd Bushman into the Google
much like Magnum
search.
PI, except you drive a piece of shit.
You call my Volkswagen
and you don't live on a rich man's estate.
I do, however, like the Detroit Tigers. Anyway, so I typed in Boyd's name into Google Patent Search, which basically is connected right to the U.S. Patent Office's, you know, archives. And lo and behold, yeah, he did work for Lockheed Martin. And he worked from, at least from what I can see, 1989 to the year 2000 when he retired. So, but here's the cool thing is what he was working on. When he worked, the one patent, I didn't look at all the patents, I didn't have time, but the one patent that he was working on was actually an anti-gravity technology, which sounds pretty cool, and it has a lot to do with what he was saying in the interview, so it kind of backs up his anti-gravity claims, you know.
Right. But
this anti-gravity device was not only an anti-gravity device, it could levitate things, which is what anti-gravity is, but it was directional. So if you took this device and pointed it at, let's say, your computer or something, it would interrupt your computer. Anything electrical, it could interrupt the, what do you call it, the electrical field. And it could actually erase your hard drive from a distance. So that's pretty damn cool. And this was all the way back in like, the mid-'80s or early '90s. So that was pretty cool for technology. And so that kind of backs up his claims about the anti-gravity stuff. And then the other patent that I read dated all the way back to 1989. And it was this device that you put in the exhaust plume of a jet, you know, like a fighter jet.
Yes, it's a banana. They did that on Beverly Hills Cop.
Well, it was
the
kinda
cops
like
couldn't
that.
follow him.
But what this thing did was change the frequency of the sound of the jet. So, you know, jets are really loud when they go by, and they have a frequency, just like your voice or my voice or the cat or, you know, the earth has a frequency. Everything has a frequency. But it would change the properties of the frequency.
My ex-wife showing up has a frequency.
Yeah. What's the frequency, Kenneth?
Once
See,
a
that's my
week.
little REM thing for the night. So anyway, it would change the frequency, and you could actually store digital messages in the frequency of the jet plume. This is 1989, by the way. You could store digital messages in the frequency of the jet plume, and then it could be received by a remote station on the ground. Now that's pretty fucking cool technology that Mr. Bushman was actually working on. I can't find any evidence to back up his claims of UFOs and aliens and shit, but I did find that stuff. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, who knows? Ultimately, I mean, yeah, he worked for Lockheed Martin. Yeah, he worked on some pretty interesting shit. Did he see aliens?
I don't know.
Do we know? No.
But working for Lockheed Martin, he did have top secret clearance. His obituary even said that. Some of his patents, he had 28 patents for Lockheed. Some of them are still classified. You can't see them. So Lockheed Martin works with Skunk Works, which is actually, or I think that's what they call their thing, but that's the Area 51 stuff. So would he have had access to Area 51? Most likely.
I don't call my thing the skunk works. I think that would, deter women.
Mine's called clearance.
Just stop.
Yes.
It's
true.
No. Just fucking stop.
Can I explain?
No, I don't want you to.
No. Clarence Thomas.
No. No. Fucking asshole.
I named it way back when.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
So anyway, Bushman was telling... Bushman. See, now we're talking about things and Bushman.
Yes, Bushman. People from
Australia? Yeah, that's what I meant. So anyway, some of his claims actually turn out to be true. So whether the rest of them are or not, I guess obviously it deserves more attention, but doubtful that it will ever come to light whether he really knew about aliens and UFOs and things like that. So
right, and but that brings us to like our topic of the night.
Government.
Is the government? Is there some government shenanigans? Is there some underhanded shadow government type shit going on here?
Of course there is.
Never know.
Well, I lost my train of thought, Chris.
Okay.
That happens from time to time.
I'm sure it does.
Like every 3 minutes. So we know that the government...
Well, we were talking about this the other day
right.
when the Boyd Bushman shit came up. And we started talking about the Cash Landrum Incident first.
Right.
Okay, and for those of you not in the know, this happened in 1980, right?
1980, December 29th.
December 29th, 1980. These two women, you can clarify after I'm done, Steve.
Okay.
Were driving in the car with one of their sons, right? Grandson. Okay.
I believe, yeah.
And they see this UFO. They see at first they saw like a light. And then they see this UFO or whatever it is, this diamond-shaped thing. And from what I gather, it was in, like, above the road.
Right.
And it's spitting fire out the bottom of it. So what do these two women do? Well, one of them, I guess, thought that it was a sign from God and tried to say, that Jesus wouldn't hurt them, so they should get out of the vehicle. And I guess it was really hot outside, which, when there's something spitting fire out the bottom of it, I think hot,
Generally.
Steve. I think hot.
Yeah, I do too.
And supposedly when they went to go get back in their vehicles, or the vehicle, sorry, the handles were too hot for them to grab with their bare hands.
Right, and the one allegedly left. It was so hot that when the one lady touched the dashboard, you know, because back then they were all padded and shit.
Right.
Well, I guess they are now. Anyway, it left an impression that stayed there for a couple of weeks, actually, before it kind of finally came out.
Right.
Of course, there's no photographic evidence of that, but...
So, and then 3 helicopters come whizzing in and everything takes off, right?
23 helicopters.
23 helicopters?
23 Chinook helicopters. The big ones. You know, the ones that transport shit.
Damn.
23.
So
it was...
go on.
It was Vicky Landrum and Betty Cash, I believe the names were, and Colby Landrum was the little boy, just to clarify all that.
And afterwards, they had like some type of what looked like radiation burns or something, some shit like that. Isn't that right?
It's actually, by their doctors, I believe, it was verified that the only way they could have had that type of burn was through radiation.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And where were these burns located?
Well, probably, I believe it was just the skin that was exposed to the heat.
Okay.
So, you know, under their clothes, I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've actually looked into it. I mean, I briefly looked at it today because I knew we were talking about it, but it's been a while since I looked at the case. But, yeah, the only one that didn't have the burns, interestingly enough, was Colby. He stayed in the car.
Right, that's what I thought, was that he stayed in the car. Because one of them was trying to convince... I'm pretty sure that one of them was trying to convince the kid, you know, that it was okay, that God, you know, Jesus wouldn't hurt him, and the kid was just so scared he wouldn't get out of the car.
Apparently, she claimed it was the second coming of Christ when she saw it at first. Of course, I think quickly they realized it had nothing to do with Jesus at all. And, you know, the radiation burns and, you know, of course that was days, weeks, months later that they started coming down with the symptoms. So, now I think he had some psychological effects from the little kid, and I think he still does to this day. He was recently on a History Channel thing explaining it, but as far as physical effects, I don't recall if he ever had any physical effects from the event. But anyway,
yeah,
it's interesting that there was 23 Chinook helicopters. So what they did next, one of the ladies contacted every military type organization that she could find that would have those kind of helicopters. And of course every one of them denied that they were theirs.
Right.
And so eventually she sued on advice of, I can't remember who it was, on advice of the one of the senators in her state, I believe it was. She sued the Air Force. Of course, they lost, but it drug on for years. Because they lost because there was no proof that those were U.S. government helicopters of any type.
They lost because the government can just cover it all up.
Basically. So this is one case of the two that we're talking about that we can actually prove that the government, at least one way or another, was involved in a UFO type case. Now, who else owns 23 Chinook helicopters besides maybe the United States Air Force?
Right. Yeah. Right? I think it's hard for them, even though obviously, you know, that it went to trial and they found that, you know, the U.S. Air Force wasn't involved. It wasn't the Air Force; it was another branch of the military. But you know, if there's 23 fucking helicopters, I am doubting very highly that it's any type of private organization.
Yeah, especially that type of helicopter.
Any type of company. Now obviously we're going on the word of the two women, correct? When it comes to this,
not all just their word. There was a retired police officer and his wife. I think he was retired at that time. He might have been active at that time. But anyway, he came forward and he witnessed 15 Chinook helicopters that evening, same evening.
Oh.
So it's not just their word that these helicopters were there and this diamond-shaped object was there. And interestingly enough, that piece of road, it was said that there was obvious, burns on the road. That piece of road, within a month was gone. It was replaced. So.
Wow.
And this is it's the
wow.
Tiny Woods, Tiny Christopher Walken?
It's crazy, Steve. A UFO.
I think that's who you were supposed to be.
In the road.
But I can't do impersonations, so it wouldn't work very good.
You can't even talk. Generally, Steve.
Generally, you're right. But anyway, so it's pretty interesting that they have at least part of their story backed up, but yet no government agency would come forward. They were interviewed by the Air Force. I don't know if the Air Force was doing that to make them feel good or, whatever. So something, this is one case where I believe that something was covered up. It had to have been.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, obviously we weren't there, we didn't see it, but I tend to agree with you with the facts that are out there. The cops seeing the helicopters, the doctors, verifying the radiation. I don't know what it was. Obviously, I mean, if you want an informative podcast, you've come to the wrong place.
Well, we're giving the basic outline of the story.
But so I tend to think that this one is in the realm of the government definitely had something to do with this motherfucker.
Well, even if it was just 15 helicopters, they counted 23. But even if it was just 15, what private organization is going to have 15 Chinook helicopters? Now they are used, I think, in some construction applications and things like that, but generally one at a time. It's not going to be 15. I don't know. I mean, it's possible, I suppose, that there's a private organization that has 15, but what would they be carrying that has flames coming out the bottom, a diamond shape, and leaves radiation burns?
I don't know.
Right. And
I don't know. I'm sure there's a few science fiction writers that could tell you.
I think Occam's razor actually works in our favor on this particular one in the government cover-up side of things.
Oh, yeah.
That is
the simplest answer is that the government had something to do with this.
Right. Absolutely. Now, what they had to do with it, we will obviously never know. Both the ladies had passed now. They'd lived into their 80s, so it didn't, kill them. It gave them health problems the rest of their lives, but it didn't kill them. The little boy, he's still alive, though. But whether or not anything will ever come of it, if the government wants it hidden, it's going to stay hidden. So that's that.
They're good at that.
Yeah.
I think they've had a lot of practice.
Well, a lot of people point to Roswell, and I don't necessarily believe Roswell was a government cover-up of any. Well, it was. Absolutely it was. But I think the explanation that the government finally gave of the radar weather balloons and the radar balloons and stuff was probably what really went on there. And it was top secret at the time, so they kind of had to cover that up. But in this case...
Well, yeah, and when we had decided to talk about this shit tonight, I thought that the Roswell incident, it's kind of hack. If you're going to go government cover-up. Because we've talked about it before, for one. And for two, it's, it's the go-to story.
Right. And, I'm so up and down on Roswell, I don't even know what I think about it. Sometimes I buy the, Stanton Friedman side of things where he claims it's all government cover-up, and, other times I buy the government side of things. It's hard to make a determination 60, 70 years later, whatever it is now.
Yeah.
And we're going to have the same problem with Cash Landrum and Rendlesham Forest because the people who are willing to talk about it are dying off. So, and the one thing I wanted to say about the Cash Landrum case was, I think it was a year or two later, they had an air show in the local town there, and a big Chinook helicopter landed. And it was a military helicopter. I believe it was Air Force, but I can't remember. I looked at it today, but I can't remember which. Anyway, so Landrum took Colby, the little boy, in because they were given tours of this helicopter, and they actually talked to the pilot. And I guess he was all friendly and stuff until she asked him about that night and if he knew anything about it. And then apparently they were escorted out of the helicopter and asked not to come back.
Wow.
So now that pilot, I don't think, has ever come forward to verify her claim, but it's just another piece to the puzzle on that one.
The Cash Landrum puzzle.
It's actually one of my favorite UFO stories, and there's a lot of reasons why.
It's a pretty interesting little story.
Well, it's one that can be verified. You know, physical things happened that can be verified.
Right.
And they had the radiation burns. The road was fixed. You know, there's witnesses that say there were more helicopters. That kind of thing.
And because we like to go backwards, it's like a Pulp Fiction podcast. We start at the end and bring you back to the beginning.
Is that how that works? I've never seen that movie.
You just get off my show.
I've never seen Pulp Fiction.
Why am I fucking friends with you?
I know who's in it. John Travolta was in it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, John Travolta was in it.
Well, that's why I haven't seen it.
So days before, it was days before this, right? The Cash Landrum incident.
Actually, the Rendlesham Forest. I think it's also known as the Bentwaters Woodbridge case and the Rendlesham Forest case, but it happened in the UK between two American military base, which is actually a former British military base. I think the British have taken it back over now, and then a British military base. But anyway, yeah, that one happened. There's a little bit of debate on the actual days, but like the 26th, 27th, and 28th of December of 1980. Cash Landrum was the 29th of December of 1980. So they were right at the same time, basically.
And interestingly enough about this craft, I don't think it was described so much as diamond-shaped as it was triangular-shaped. But triangular shapes... In some
instances, it was described as a diamond shape.
Right, because it had, like, points at two ends, kind of.
Depending on who the
person
which
was.
witness you talked to, right.
Right. So, and you know, we find this kind of interesting because this happens over in the UK, where they have these sightings of this, you know, UFO, which is very similar to the one that winds up being seen on the 29th by Cash and Landrum.
Right. And I had, said to you before the show, I don't know if they could transport something that big, that fast, you know, but apparently if it's a UFO that travels at light speed, it's probably possible. But even if not, I suppose they could get it over here in a day. I don't know.
Yeah, I just find, when we started talking about it, I find it pretty interesting. You know, the time frames are really interesting. Both sighting stories are very interesting. Really, you know, what you would call credible backup witnesses to the whole thing.
Well, we'll just call it the Rendlesham case. Well, that one was all military guys, you know, and very military police, I believe most of them were.
Right.
So it's not like your average, you know, private in the military. It was trained fellas. And they, at first they thought they seen some lights go down into the forest, and they didn't think too much of it. They just thought it was a crashed airplane. An airplane had gone down or something. Although I don't believe there was any sound associated with it at that time, but they seen the lights in the forest, and then
they just made the assumption.
Right. And it turned out pretty fucking interesting. I've watched this story on like Unsolved Mysteries back in the day, and History Channel's done a few things on it, but they saw a fucking UFO, a landed UFO, and it was, I guess the next day or a couple days later, they went out and checked, and they found the landing impressions, and they were triangular shaped. And it's a big reason why I like this case, because there's another case that happened in my hometown, and the landing impressions were almost identical to what they've got over here, and the description of the craft was almost the same. So but we won't go into that one tonight. But they did find some radiation in the landing impressions. And then Cash Landrum, they had radiation burns. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's just some interesting coincidences between the two cases happening at around literally the same fucking time.
Yeah, that kind of always has gotten me. I don't know if a lot of people have associated the two cases together, but you kind of almost have to. Being, I know they were on opposite sides of the world and everything, but just the coincidence of the timing, I guess, and the description of the craft. And, you know, one person might see a triangular shape while another person at a different angle will see a diamond shape. So it's a possibility, I guess. Although I don't think the one in the Bentwaters Rendlesham Forest case was described as having fire coming out of it. But maybe something was wrong with it. I don't know.
Right. Who knows?
But anyway, these guys are credible, and the guy who was the head of the investigation was named Charles Halt, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. He made an actual tape recording of the whole thing, and that was only available through Freedom of Information Act requests. He had a memo, a really watered down memo of the events. You know, he explained why the memo was so watered down. Is because he didn't, you know, it was such a weird event. You know, you don't want to report this all to your superiors at that time, you know.
Right.
So in a way, I think the mindset there was he started covering it up unwillingly, not even, you know, subconsciously even. So then the deputy commander of the base had earlier said that he went out and investigated and he seen the landing site. And later, even to this day now, he claims that he never went out there. And
later,
these guys are pretty
after some people showed up at his house.
Basically, yeah. Now he claims that he never went out there. These guys are just making up a story, and, you know, he pretty much calls them a bunch of liars now. But you got 4, 5, 6 guys that were out there. I know one was James Peniston. His story is pretty freaky, but he underwent, you know, hypnosis and stuff. So I don't know how much of it you can trust after.
Right.
Fact,
Yeah.
Because he never claimed to see the craft in the original memos. But of course, they explained that because they were told not to say it. You know, they were told to give a watered-down version. So that's what happened back in those days. Now, is that a government cover-up?
Who knows? Again, who fucking knows?
Well, we absolutely know the government was involved.
Oh, yes, the government was involved.
The military. And we absolutely know that the only way to get the information was from Freedom of Information Act requests. By the way, both the U.S. military and the Ministry of Defense in the U.K. investigated this. And when the Ministry of Defense was asked for all their documents on the case, most of what they turned over Charles Halt's original memo, but most of what they turned over was just citizens asking questions, you know, how you might write to the Air Force and say, hey, what happened here? That's basically all they ever turned over. They never turned over any actual investigation stuff. And neither did, except for the Halt memo and the tape recording and I guess the original statements of the guys, there was no internal investigation because they said it wasn't a national security issue. Well, I'm sorry, and that's the same excuse that you would get nowadays too.
Right.
I'm sorry, but if you got 2 Air Force bases and something, I don't care if it's a private plane lands in between both of those, you know, bases, there is going to be a national security issue there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got 2 different countries' military bases. The forest, Rendlesham Forest, is like 5 square miles. So it's not huge, but it's not small either.
Right.
But you got between the 2 bases 5 miles, and something comes in there that's unknown. That is the definition of a national security issue. You know? I'm just saying. So why don't they want us to know what it was?
Because they're the government.
Right. This is 1980, right? I mean, what could possibly still be a national security issue now that was then? I mean, this was in the UK between, it wasn't in,
It was fucking aliens. That's what the
Afghanistan. It
fucking
wasn't.
national security issue is, Steve.
Well, there's a lot more to
Well,
that
no, it could.
story, but
It very well could possibly have been some type of technology type thing that the military was working on.
it's a possibility.
That's a possibility.
I think in both cases, that's a probability, if you ask me.
Correct. Could it be that it was a UFO and the military was trying to track it? That's
It's a possibility.
a complete possibility. Because if we look at it the way the timeline's set up, the government obviously came into contact with the thing, or something very similar to what was seen later on. And then later on, it's being chased by helicopters.
If it's the same object.
Or
even if it's a different object, it still points to the government involved in both cases.
Yeah.
And we don't, I mean, if you do a Freedom of Information Act request on Cash Landrum, you're just going to get the court case, you're going to get their original statements to the Air Force and that kind of stuff, but you're not going to get what they found, if they found anything. But obviously, you've got, in both cases, military people. I mean, because you don't have 23 Chinook helicopters without military people involved, former military even, but probably Air Force. So obviously there's some sort of weirdness going on that somebody doesn't want us to know about.
You don't think there's an underground organization that isn't the government?
You mean like the shadow government?
Shadow government. Well, shadow government, I think, is part of the government if you're going to talk about shadow governments. I'm talking about something that's outside of the government.
Is that a possibility? I suppose so. There's a lot of evidence that points to things like that, like the Bilderberger group and all. What is that? What they're called? Bilderberg or something like that group?
Or something. Yeah, I've heard about that.
Right. So, is it possible that there's something else that runs things instead of our governments? Absolutely. Is there any real proof of it? You'll never find it because it'll be hidden. Our government's so compartmentalized in top secret things that, one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing, and that's on purpose so that we don't know.
Oh, and it's a way it's a way for them to have plausible deniability.
Right. So, like going back to Boyd Bushman, he might have been working on anti-gravity, and he might have been told one thing, while the guy sitting right next to him might have been working on the same project, but told a whole different story.
Correct.
And that's the way the government works on those top secret projects. So, yeah, there's definitely government cover-ups. Now, their reasoning would be for national security issues. But in both these cases, neither one of them were national security issues, according to the government. So there's got to be other reasons for why they don't come out.
There was an unidentified UFO, but yeah, it's not a national security issue. We got it all under control.
Yeah, it's never a national security issue. Now, the Air Force used to investigate UFOs. It's called Project Blue Book. You're familiar with that, I'm sure. But it officially ended in 1969.
That's where they have all like the prices of the old UFOs.
Yes.
So you can tell what you can sell them for.
That's the different Blue Book, but yes.
Oh, okay.
Now, through the years, it was Project Grudge was one name for it. There was a couple different names, but it ended up being Project Blue Book. But they officially ended in 1969. But I guarantee that these sightings.
It was originally called Project Blue Balls because nothing ever came of it.
Well, here, what most people believe, nothing ever came. Yeah. Now you've got nothing. Now I'm lost. No, but it officially ended in 1969, and their statement was the same as what they said in the Rendlesham Forest case, that no UFO has ever been a national security risk. But in my opinion, every credible UFO case is a national security risk if we don't know what the damn thing is. Right?
I say, son,
I said credible.
It wasn't national security.
It's the swamp
You're a
gas
Bigfoot hunter, son.
of our day. It's not a national security risk. It's the same as when they used to say it was just swamp gas. It's their explanation for everything now. Now, do I believe in UFOs? Abso-fucking-lutely. I've seen them. No response?
I say, you were on LSD, son.
Well, that's another, yeah, we covered that in a previous show. Well, yeah, and the government covered that up for a long time, too. So are there government cover-ups? Absolutely.
Yeah, there's government cover-ups.
And they're still going on to this day.
Yeah, to ask that question, are there government cover-ups? Yes, of course there are.
Yeah. Now, for UFOs, are there government cover-ups for UFOs? Probably. Some of those things
probably because they're testing shit that they don't want people to know about. So yeah, probably.
In most cases, I would say. I'd say in a good portion of cases, it's probably a known object that somebody knows about, but not us, not as citizens.
Right.
Now, other cases so strange that they defy logic. They defy physics. They defy anything that we know. So, and there's been a couple that I've actually seen that defy logic. So I don't know whether they're coming from outer space or there's something that we know about that not we as citizens, but the government or the military or whatever testing something. Why would they test them where I'm at? I have no clue. But, obviously if we have some sort of advanced technology that we don't want our enemies to get their hands on, we have to cover that up. I mean, so I agree that sometimes government cover-ups can be a good thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's some things that have to be kept secret, I guess, if you're going to have a government.
Yeah, well, the stealth bomber, that thing was kept secret for decades, while they were developing it.
Right.
And once it was actually found out, they started using the damn thing. Well, if it had been put out publicly in the beginning, obviously it wouldn't have been an effective weapon, right? So, because then our enemies would have.
Well, it would have changed the game.
Not our particular.
It would have changed the game.
You're right. It would have changed the game.
That's what it's all about.
And you know how many UFO sightings were blamed on the stealth fighter was responsible for? A lot.
Right.
Because nobody knew what it was, and it defied anything that we knew at the time. I mean, it was fast, faster than anything we had, and you couldn't see it on radar and all that shit. So a lot of the old-time sightings, but yes, the government covered it up, and I'm sure they had a lot of misinformation campaigns going on about it too, or disinformation, I think they call it, right?
Yeah, they use propaganda, they use the media.
Sometimes
it happens. It happens. For people to think that it doesn't happen, you're naive. It happens.
Right. Now, can you find any credible evidence that the government covers anything up? Absolutely not. You're never going to find the actual evidence that they covered it up.
No, that guy's dead.
Yeah. And yeah, the government's been known to do that as well. So, yeah, government cover-ups are alive and well, and they always will be. And sometimes they're for good, and sometimes they're not. So, in these two cases that we talked about tonight, I would really like to know what the fuck really went down, but I doubt we ever will.
We're probably never gonna find out.
But those guys in Rendlesham, man, they swear to this day that that's what it was, and yet some of their stories have changed a little bit over time. That happens. Have they embellished a few things? They may have. The notoriety will do that to you sometimes, but the basic story that they told has stayed the same all through. So, and Cash Landrum as well. The story that they told from the beginning was the same story they told all the way through. Even the Air Force guy who interviewed them originally said these people are telling the truth. But yet, the Air Force had nothing to do with it, and neither did any other branch of the military. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of suspect if you ask me. I mean, if you ask me, it's fucking a little suspect. But who the fuck am I?
Yeah, me either. You get UFO investigators involved, and of course they're looking for their angle, their niche.
Oh, if you're looking for UFOs, you're gonna see UFOs and everything. If you're looking for fucking Bigfoot, you're gonna see Bigfoot and fucking everything. I mean, it's the way of it.
Right.
And I think that is a mentality that is pervaded on television lately. That is just fucking sickening. Everything is is this or it's that. Everything is a UFO, or everything is a fucking, is the Loch Ness monster, or it's fucking Bigfoot, Well, yeah. How can, the one thing that fucking pisses me off about finding Bigfoot, how can you go to an area, hear something, not see anything, and say, yeah, this is definitely some fucking Sasquatch activity right here. Yeah.
Because it makes for better television.
Yeah, this is definitely some good, we got some good Sasquatch activity going on here. I think we should stick with it.
A lot of that is the way it's edited, although, certain people on that particular show, Finding Bigfoot, believe everything's a fucking Bigfoot, Matt Moneymaker.
And
others...
and fucking Bobo, too.
And Bobo a lot of the time.
This is
Cliff.
This is Squatchy. It's Squatchy, Steve. Squatchy.
Cliff, I've had conversations with Cliff. He's a pretty decent guy, and he's probably sometimes for the show. I think he might say things that probably aren't the case, but generally that guy is.
But this goes back to something that we talked about a while ago about how these shows hurt more than they help. I think. Do they give...
Sometimes I agree, sometimes I disagree, Chris, because if it weren't for Finding Bigfoot, actually the original Ohio episode of Finding Bigfoot, I would have never gotten involved with the Bigfoot community. Yeah, somebody just sneezed. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and then they chuckled about it, too. I'll have to have a good talk with that person.
Keep people out of the studio.
For some reason, I left the studio door open tonight, and yeah, people off the street just wandering.
That'll happen. Those fucking vagabonds on the street. Well, they're called street women, Steve. They work corners.
Well, that was no street woman. No, don't even go there.
But no, I personally think that a lot of these reality, quote unquote, based TV shows, they hurt a lot more than they help. Yes, do they draw attention to things? Do they get people involved? Right. Yes, they have, very much so. However, I don't know that it's helped.
The problems that I have with shows like Finding Bigfoot, and I even had that problem before I got into the Bigfoot research and stuff like that, is that people want to mimic what they do. And what they do is a bunch of bullshit.
But and to go back to,
and they'll admit that.
But to go back to what we're talking about tonight, the UFO programs, the ancient alien shit, they all do the same shit.
Absolutely.
So it's not just relegated to the Bigfoot shit. Like I said earlier, that's just an easy one to go to.
Hell, the Loch Ness Monster shows do the same shit. Every little underwater anomaly is a Loch Ness Monster in Loch Ness, So it's we have to be cautious when we're watching shit on TV. I remember the Detlef Pass show that they did on History not that long ago, was it? And they blamed it on a Bigfoot. What the fuck?
Oh, the Russian Yeti thing?
Yeah, that was a bunch of bullshit.
We actually did that. You weren't there that night. Matt and I did that.
No, I missed that one. That kind of thing is detrimental because people died. I mean, come on. And now you want to just tear them apart and say, hey, this is what happened. And you're presenting it as fact when you in fact know that that's not the case. None of that happened. Some of it, there was very little fact in that show.
Right, and when we did that show, I remember because I think neither of us had seen it. Like, we just did it
Right.
as if
Oh yeah, that's
we
right.
did it as if this is what you're going to see, and I'm pretty sure we were fucking spot on.
Probably because that's how these shows operate. And now I understand that it's for entertainment. Uh, Most of what you see on the History Channel is fucked up. What they did, that stupid. I think it was Discovery did that stupid mermaid thing.
Oh
I mean,
God,
come
yeah,
on. And people bought that. That's the
yeah.
problem. The worst acting I've seen in my entire life, except one show on Destination America now that will remain unnamed. But worst acting I've ever seen, and people bought that.
Dude,
Mermaids.
I can remember, and I don't know if you remember this particular. It was a fake documentary that they put out. I want to say it was on Discovery Channel. I'm not sure if it was. But it was a if dragons were real type thing. Okay? And I can remember they put this thing out there, and I had friends, and this just goes to show you like what the mentality of some people are and what these shows can do. I had friends that came to me after this because I saw the promos for it, and I'm like, this is a bunch of horse shit. I can't watch this. And then I hear people telling me, oh, it was amazing, man, and they went through and they showed like how like it could have actually biologically happened, and how they could have actually like breathed fire, and I might be all in now. Like, there were people that were telling me that they fucking actually believed that dragons could have walked the fucking earth. Now, granted, there are things that could have fucking walked the earth that we don't know about, absolutely, but based on
dragons could have been one of them.
Based on this fucking horse shit TV show, they came to these conclusions.
Right. And I call that the War of the Worlds mentality.
Oh yeah.
That's what it is.
The fucking sky is falling.
You're hearing this. Because they made several announcements that it was a fake show, but people still went crazy and nuts thinking it was real because you're hearing what you want to hear when you listen to these shows. And
well, in that case too, though, people tuned in when the broadcast was just going.
Yeah, but if every commercial break, I believe they said, okay, this is a drama. But now, if you just heard a portion of it, maybe, yeah, I can understand where you might think it's real. And back in those days, maybe most of things on the radio were serious broadcasts. I know they had their regular shows, but you know what I mean? So if it was a news-type broadcast, you bought the news. You bought what the guy was selling.
Right.
So, and it sounded like a news broadcast. I mean, Walter Cronkite was the most trusted man in America, So.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a different time, I guess.
Right.
But
now, some people think that now that we're on government cover-ups and stuff, some people think that those kind of shows are disinformation campaigns by the government. What do you think?
What types of shows? Like
like
on the news?
No, the shows that we're talking about, like the Deathbed Pass incident and the the alien shows and
I don't know that. I'm not gonna go for the stretch that the government's got their hand in it, but I'm sure they don't give a shit. Like, I'm sure they're like, fucking make yourselves look like jackasses. Because there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are dumb, but there's a lot of people who are intelligent, and there's a lot of people who will look at that and go, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, a lot of researchers believe that there may not be anything such as space aliens coming to the Earth, but that the government uses that. When we see something like a stealth bomber back in the day or whatever,
right? They use that as the
UFO
misdirection,
as a disinformation campaign, right? As misdirection. Now, hey, these people want to believe that it's a UFO. We're going to let them believe that, and we might even feed them some information. The
government is David Copperfield.
So I guess in that way, if the government keeps quiet and doesn't say anything when questioned about certain events, maybe that is a way of them covering something that they don't want you to know about, you know.
Right.
Like the Phoenix Lights, for example, the government had nothing to do with that. Now, I think they were probably just flares, but whatever, you know.
It is what it is.
You know, they kept silent about it for the most part. You know, no, it wasn't us, move on, that kind of thing. So in a way, you know, denial is part of a cover-up, I guess, and disinformation even. If you know, because they want you.
Denial is not a fucking river in Egypt, am I right, Steve?
No, it's not just a river in Egypt. Is it a river in Egypt? Is that it's in Egypt, right?
Yeah, it's in Egypt, I think.
No, it's somewhere over there. Somewhere I've never been.
Place I don't fucking know. Like I said, if you tuned into this fucking podcast to get the fucking straight facts, you might have to do a little research on your own.
Well, we gave basic overviews of
this. This podcast comes with homework.
Cases, I did like the Boyd Bushman part, because there is information about Boyd Bushman that does need to get out, because a lot of these people are trashing this man after his death for his story, and I think he probably believed what he was saying. Now, whether it's all true is a different story. We don't know that yet, but you know, people just jump because the alien photo was fake. They jump to the conclusion that, okay, this guy is totally full of shit. He never worked for any of these companies, and all it took was a simple Google search to find out that he actually did. And that kind of makes me upset when people just jump to a conclusion sometimes before they do any research on the subject. If you go on YouTube right now, there's a lot of people trashing this man. The guy's dead. He can't defend himself anymore, and he's been around for several years, but just because one video goes viral, now people have to come on.
Well, you know how the internet is.
Right, and I get it, but somebody's got to be there to put out the facts. You know, he's not lying. He didn't lie about everything, and I don't think he lied about anything, to be honest with you. I think people were feeding him false shit, but I don't think he was lying himself. You know, he believed, just like some of these Bigfoot people, when they get a photo of a Bigfoot, alleged Bigfoot, or UFO people, when they get information from an outside source that they trust, they believe it, and then they go with it.
Right.
Well, I think that's probably what he was doing, Bushman, and he had some experiences that we haven't. You know, he worked for Lockheed Martin in some of these top secret programs. So if somebody with enough intelligence was feeding him something that he, you know, it made sense to him, then of course he's going to put it out there. And I think that's really probably what happened with the guy. He's passed polygraph tests and everything else. So I just wanted to defend the man a little bit when I found out that he actually did do what he said he did as far as his work history and stuff. So that's where I was going with that. You can find the video on Slick Toys, SLIKTOYS, at YouTube.
I'm no expert. Come to your own conclusions.
Well, that's basically what I say in the video too. I did my little MK Davis. Yes, but I wanted, I wanted to defend the guy. I mean, people are trashing him, and if something he said was in fact true, it deserves to be said.
I want it to come out now that it's that it's a complete hoax. Fucking Steve's fucking.
Well, you can't just say it's a complete hoax, right? Without doing homework on it. Now, even with the blue tarp incident, we all obviously know that's a complete hoax, but you still have to look into it a little bit and pick on the guy and have fun with it. But
there's blue tarps everywhere, Steve.
I, in fact, found one today.
Yeah.
I did. Oh, also on my YouTube channel, you can find some exclusive photos of the Bigfoot in the blue tarp.
Yeah.
I hear the beast fled by a means of transportation that I would never have thought, but go check out my YouTube and you'll see.
Yeah.
He fled. He got away from Dyer. Everybody wants to get away from Dyer, even fucking Bigfoot. So
there's blue tarps everywhere, Steve. You need to become a believer, because there are blue tarps and there is ice.
And that blue tarp that I have photos of today was, in fact, in Pennsylvania. In fact, there was a Bigfoot in it, and I have photographs. So they were sent to me by an anonymous, source, my iPhone.
Yeah, I'm sure. He's fucking jackass. Do you have some fucking news tonight or what?
Yeah, now that we drug on forever.
Yeah, but it was good.
Yeah, I think so. So this one you actually sent to me, Chris, but because the website wanted me to subscribe to their fucking, thing and pay money, I said bullshit, so I found it on another site.
That's fine.
NBC, New York, and we just had Halloween, so this is kind of a Halloween-y story. Halloween-y.
Yes.
A Long Island couple with a 2-year-old child thought they were opening their door for trick-or-treaters, but instead were accosted. I love that word. Accosted by masked home invaders who tied them up while ransacking their house, police said. The 34-year-old woman answered her door around 8:45 p.m. and encountered 3 masked adults. 2 of them arrived with handguns, according to Nassau County Police. The 3 forced their way into the Farmingdale home and demanded that the woman and her 48-year-old husband, he likes him young, huh? He's 48, she's 34.
Come for your daughter, Chuck.
That's not my daughter. Anyway, they made him sit down, and then when the husband refused, he was repeatedly pistol-whipped, receiving lacerations to the head, police said. According to police, the couple's hands and feet were bound with duct tape. And duct tape can do anything. 2 more people joined the attackers and began rummaging through the family's house, police said. When the woman was able to free herself, she grabbed her son and ran to a neighbor's to call 911. The attackers fled, according to police. The husband was taken to a hospital where he is treated for the lacerations, police said. Holy hell, my throat dried out during that story.
Yeah, your throat dried out. I got a fucking cold coming on.
Yeah, make some funny commentary while I get a drink.
Funny commentary. Funny commentary. Funny commentary. Funny commentary. Are you done?
In our next story from NBCnews.com, I guess they found a piece of Amelia Earhart's plane, allegedly. Researchers say they may have identified a piece of the airplane flown by vanished aviatrix Amelia Earhart. Boy, they use some cool words tonight in these stories. Aviatrix.
You're just impressed that you haven't fucked up yet.
Oh, yeah, true. Anyway, they say they've found this piece of... I fucked up. Aviatrix, there we were. Amelia Earhart, as she made an ill-fated bid. Why'd you have to say something, Chris? Why?
Keep going.
An ill-fated bid to circle the globe more than 70 years ago. As reported by Discovery News, an investigation done by an International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, or TIGHAR, wow, looked at a small piece of aluminum sheeting that was found on the Pacific atoll of Nikumaroro.
I'm sure that's exactly how you pronounce it, Steve.
Nikumaroro. Nikumaroro. In 1991. They found it in 1991. The location has long been suspected by some Earhart enthusiasts as a place she and navigator Fred Noonan may have made a forced landing. The researchers found the features of the piece of metal line up with a quick repair patch that was put on Earhart's aircraft during a stop in Miami as she made her 1937 attempt. Its complex fingerprint of dimensions, proportions, materials, and rivet patterns was as unique to Earhart's plane as a fingerprint is to an individual. Discovery quoted TIGHAR researcher Rick Gillespie as saying, "This is the first time an artifact found on Nikumaroro has been shown to have a direct link to Amelia
child?
Earhart." I don't know, but that's a funny word. It's a funny word. Nikumaroro. TIGHAR detailed its research on the patch on its website and said it will continue to conduct tests on the fragment. In our final story, from mysteriousuniverse.org, a farmer found a skull in a chain box, and he claims it's from a werewolf. A farmer in a small village in Macedonia.
I am the werewolf!
Is digging up a new part of his field when the plow hits an object.
I like to make werewolf movies!
It's a box that's chained shut. Being brave and curious, he opened it and found a strange skull that looks to him to be from a werewolf.
My name is Steve, and I like to wear dresses.
Apparently in Macedonia they call them Varkolaks, werewolf. The story is a farmer named Kaci from Novo Selo Stipsko in Macedonia told Philip Ganoff. I'm just reading the story. I don't know.
This guy from ipso facto.
He told Philip Ganoff, a Bulgarian student who was in the village doing research on the Balkan Wars, the inside lid of the box contains lettering in Cyrillic script, which is common in Bulgarian and Macedonian languages. But no translation was given for the lettering, which would have been helpful. Of course it would have. He wouldn't part with the werewolf skull, but he did let Ganoff take pictures.
Werewolf skull?
Werewolf skull. But he did let Ganoff take pictures, which were presented to a wildlife expert in Bulgaria, who suspected that it was indeed from a wolf, but not necessarily a werewolf. Instead, he surmised that the wolf was suffering from Paget's disease, a genetic disorder, which is also common in humans, by the way, that can cause misshapen bones and enlarged skulls. Paget's disease can be caused by canine distemper virus, a common virus in wolves and dogs. The skull definitely looks both canine and human, and a little baboonish, which would probably cause some consternation among the Bulgarians and Macedonians.
Bloody baboon!
Anyway, the chain around the box is a good indication whoever buried it believed it was a creature they didn't want roaming around again. So the skull is the skull in the box from a werewolf? Well, it's definitely a creature that's out of the norm. Only DNA test will tell. But of course, the guy ain't giving up the damn skull, so there probably won't be any DNA. The box doesn't look that old, Chris.
I'm sorry.
Just my estimation.
I'm sorry.
Maybe
you think they
like,
picked it up at Walmart a few weeks ago?
I'm pretty certain that it wasn't buried like 100 years ago or anything. It's got hinges that you can buy at your local Home Depot.
Hey, I'm with you.
So, yeah. Well, I guess werewolves are still around, right?
If you say so. I mean, I personally haven't seen one.
It's probably that dog man that Gaudet guy was telling me about.
Yeah. Did you have to?
But anyway, so that's the news. No, I didn't, but I did anyhow. It's an impressive looking skull.
I'm dying. Steve.
Well, can that pass over the airwaves?
I might be able to.
It's not like Ebola or anything, is it?
No.
Oh, you are in...
I am in Maine, and that fucking Kaci Hickox bitch is running around.
No, she's not. She's in the hospital now. She got a fever.
Oh! Look at that.
At least that's what I read on the internet.
This has been episode 54 of the Fortean Slip. I don't have a fucking title. Like us, subscribe, say nice things. Or say shitty things, and
or nothing at all.
I'll say shitty things back to you.
Because we like that kind of banter.
That's how I roll, motherfucker.